Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Did the two bulls in the Táin Bó Cuailnge hate each other? Well, dag the agus fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan to the Irish Pagan School. And it might seem like a bit of an odd cast or question, but there is a lot more to the Ulster cycle than one story tells. So for those who don't know, the Ulster cycle is the academic kind of grouping of stories that center around the post-mythological era and the pre-Fenian era of Ireland's myth. Central to the Ulster cycle is the Táin Bó Cuailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley, very famously known for the two bulls that are centered around the narrative, the Finnbhennach, the white bull or the white-horned bull from Connacht, and the Donn Cuailnge, the brown of Cooley, which is from Ulster. Now, of course, there's a lot of other people involved in this. It's not just about bulls. It is the conflict between Queen Maeve of Connacht and Concover, king in Ulster, and of course centres around the Cuchulainn and the battle against Ferdia. So for all of the rivalries that are going on, like Concover and Fergus MacRocht, the new king and the deposed king, the Queen in Connacht, or Connacht versus Ulster, represented by Concover and again by Maeve. And then, of course, Cuchulainn and pretty much every other hero in Ireland, or more specifically, his sword brother Ferdia. So there's a lot of kind of back and forth. There's a lot of rivalries in this particular narrative. So it seems odd that people might forget that the bulls themselves actually have beef in that they have reason to hate each other. They have reason for their rivalry and their animosity. And the way we find this out is by looking at who they are. Not what they are, but who they are. In what's known as a rave scale, or a pre-story to the Táin Bó Cuailnge, it's known as the quarrel of the two pig keepers. And so in this previous story, this rave scale, we have the naming of two individuals. There's a guy called Friuch, who is the pig keeper for Bómh Dearg, the king of the Sidhe in Munster. And there's a guy called Rucht, who is the pig keeper for Cuailgne, who is the king of the Sidhe in Connacht. So long before the time of Maeve and Ailill, we had the Sidhe kings, Bómh Dearg being the son of the Dagda, and Cuailgne, the king in Connacht. So at that time in the narrative, these two pig keepers, they're not just pig keepers. When we talk about pigs in the mythology before cattle, before cows, the display of your herd of pigs was your wealth. And that's why champions' portions in later time frames are about fatted or fed pigs. It's because pigs are linked with that. So before people had herds of cows, they had herds of pigs. And so these two individuals, Friuch and Rucht, were not just people who minded the pigs, they were the guardians of the pigs. They were the guardians of the wealth, which means that they were quite powerful individuals. And as most stories goes, they started out as friends. So the tale has that Friuch and Rucht would meet up whenever they were sent out. How do you wrangle a herd of pigs? They graze where they're going to graze. And so the two guys would meet up and they would be like, okay, well, my herd is grazing on Bómh Dearg's land, or my herd is grazing on Cuailnge's land. And it's this back and forward where they're kind of grazing all over the place, and Friuch and Rucht are okay with that. Until one day, the herds start to grow in size, they're quite big, and a rivalry starts between Bómh Dearg and Cuailnge. And they're like, well, aren't my pigs brilliant? Or my land sustains better pigs. And the other king is like, well, no, my land sustains better pigs. Look at my pigs are bigger than your pigs. Look at my pigs are healthier than your pigs. All the while, Friuch and Rucht are kind of kicking dirt there because they know that all of the pigs have been feeding on all of the land, regardless of who's the king of that Sidhe. But of course, the rivalry doesn't stay between the kings, and it does come down to Friuch and Rucht. And they come against each other. It turns into fists, it turns into fighting, but then it also turns into magical castings at each other because, again, these aren't just random people. These are the guardians of the wealth of both Jarrock and Cuailnge. And during the conflict, Friuch and Rucht both die. But their grudge, their rivalry does not end with death. And what follows in the rest of the story is the two individuals transforming time and again, being reborn time and again in a variety of different forms. And every time they are reborn, they find each other and they continue their fight. They are reborn as various hawks and they are flying and scrapping in the skies. They transform into stags and they are born again as stags and they rival each other and they ruck and they kill each other again. They transform themselves into spirits. It's referred to as demons or dragons or monsters in this ethereal form, and they still find each other and they still combat each other until at last they turn themselves into what's known as paist or small worms. And as small worms, they end up falling into different, now again, generations has passed by this point. Pigs are no longer the symbol of wealth, cows are. But all of the time, Friuch and Rucht in all of these various forms have been battling against each other until they become paste or small little pests, and they are then consumed by cattle. And those cattle become pregnant with, again, the new recurrence of Friuch and Rucht. Now, there's an additional element to this tale which involves the goddess Morrigan, who is said to bring, or well, in some translations it's not her, in other translations it is. She brings a cow out of the other world to be bred pretty much in our world. And she comes across Cuchulainn, who's like, I'm the guardian of all cows, and you can't be taking a cow anywhere. But it says that this woman, being followed by a silent, large red man, won't really address him or won't deal with him. And she's bringing this cow because she knows that from this cow is going to be born the Donn Cuailnge. In later versions or later recensions of the Táin, in fact, the Morrigan in the form of a crow goes to the Donn Cuailnge and warns the Brown of Cooley that the men of Connacht are coming to steal it away. So there is this connection and relationship between the other world and these two central bulls. As it happens, in the Táin Bó Cuailnge, the raid is successful. Maeve and her men manage to get the Donn Cuailnge and they drive the Donn Cuailnge into Connacht. But when the brown bull arrives in the territory of the Finnbhennach, the white bull, they recognize each other, they realize each other, and they know who each other are. And of course, the contest begins and ends in death. Not just for one, but as usual, for both. The victor in this time frame, though, it goes to the Donn Cuailnge, who with a large kind of impalement and shake of his horns, he lifts the Finnbhennach off the ground and slays him, but then carries the body of the Finnbhennach on the way back to Ulster. And parts of the body of his rival bull fall off as it decays on his horns. So much so that the town of Athlone in Ireland is the town of the loins because there's a fording of the river there, and it's said that Donn Cuailnge crossed that ford of the river and the loins of the Finnbhennach fell off its horns, and that's why it became the place of the loins. Athlone now is the place of the loins named for the loins of the Finnbhennach from the Ulster cycle. I absolutely love that the lore of names and places still exists on our landscape. But it doesn't end positively for Donn Cuailnge. Having carried many wounds from the Finnbhennach, it makes it back to Cooley, but there it dies. So, ní answer, not hard to say. Yes, it is possible for the two bulls that center the Táin Bó Cuailnge narrative to know each other and hate each other because they are the reborn, transmigrated spirits of Friuch and Rucht from all the time ago, coming back and engaging in their rivalries down through the generations. One thing I wonder as a storyteller, it doesn't keep me up at night, but I do wonder, and I ponder about it on occasion. For every generation, Friuch and Rucht come back as rivals. They battle and they fight each other. Who's to say that stopped? with the Táin Bó Cuailnge. Not me. If you'd enjoyed this, thank you very much for staying with us, and thank you for being with us at the Irish Pagan School. You can pick up a whole load of free content, a year or more's worth of free content available at irishpagan.school/free. And until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.